Well, here we are today. I'm just going to tell a story. Now, the story I'm going to tell you is basically the reason that I do not wear seatbelts and do not believe in seatbelts. Now, I've got this story written down, so it may look like I'm reading it, which is probably a fact, because I am going to read it. It's been quite a long time since I've told the story, so here we go. Well, it happened a long time ago, back in the 80s, probably 83 or 84 to be exact, back when you could buy a car for a couple of $100. In my case, I would buy cars for under 200. I was a mechanic, and so I would buy a car that was in need of repair. The car we're talking about in particular was a 1972 Ford Torino. I bought it for $125. I got it running pretty good, and I was driving it every day back and forth to work, except my transmission started slipping, and I wasn't real good with automatic transmission repair. So there was a guy in the paper who would rebuild transmission for about $20. So I took my transmission and I took it to him. He just so happened to have one that he had already rebuilt. So I traded him and put that in my car. Things were going pretty well for a while, but I started to lose compression, which means the engine wasn't running quite right. So a friend of mine had a suggestion. He said he would give me $75 if we would take that car and tear it up. And let me clarify, tear it up. There was a show on television back then called The Dukes of Hazzard, and they used to do stunts in their vehicles. Well, that's what we decided we were going to do. So we went out to an old gravel road where there just so happened to be some dry creek beds. We took the car back up in those dry creek beds, and we were playing around, just trying to, power slide, smashing the rear quarter panels into trees, and it was kind of fun and cool. We were catching most of it on video. Well, I say video. Those days it was called, in those days, we called it video, but it was actually Super 8 movie. We decided that we were going to leave this section of creek bed, and that we were the section of creek bed that we were in, and move to a different area. We also decided we weren't going to play around on the road. But that was not the case. A friend of mine, we'll just call him Marty. Well, Marty decided that there was a perfect tree on the side of the road. Well, you can't pass up a perfect tree. Now, there were about 6 of us in the car, which meant one of us didn't have a seat belt. And seeing how I was leaning out the window shooting movie, when Marty called out, "I'm going to try this tree." Well, I slid back inside the window, and I was the one left without a seat belt. You ever been in an emergency situation when everything seems to go in slow motion? Well, that's just what happened. Marty cut the wheel to the left, and now the car grabbed traction before it hit the tree. It just so happened there was a sloping hill on the left, and we went up it. And then, as if we went in slow motion, the car rolled over onto its roof. If you ever watched a movie, or on most television shows, if a car rolled over on its roof, the next thing that happened was it burst into flames and then blew up. Now, my 5 friends were hanging upside down, and they were all strapped in their seatbelts. Immediately, in my mind, I was thinking, I better get out and see if the car is in flames. It wasn't. And so after letting them know, all I heard was thump, bump, clunk, ouch, as they fell on their heads. Then I thought of those creek beds. If we would have been in a creek, their heads would have been underwater, and they would be drowning. Too scary for me, so I decided at that point in time to never wear a seatbelt again. Some people say that's good, some people say that's bad, but I'm here today because of that decision. So I say that's good. That's the end of what I have written in the story. Let me go ahead and finish up the story. So anyway, after we rolled the car over, we were going to take the car to Taylor's junkyard. Well, after the car was flipped over, Marty had a backup vehicle, so we needed to figure out how to get that car flipped back over. So Marty decided that he was going to take that car and take his backup vehicle and go and find a farmer. Well, we piled in the car. We had 2 or 3 friends stay back at the car just in case there was something going on. Well, we went and found a guy with a tractor. Well, he decided he would come on down and help us flip that car back over. When we returned to the car, there was a sheriff's deputy sitting on the other side of the car in his police car. And he said, well, boys, you're going to have to get that car off the road. And so we said, all right, we'll just go ahead and do that. So we pulled hooked that tractor chain up to the car, and we started to flip it over. Well, the police officer said that he had already called a tow truck and was telling us there was no way we were going to get that car to flip back over. Well, that if anybody knows anything about tractors and tow trucks, tractors have a much better chance of pulling a car over than a tow truck would. So that car first off started to slide, but we the 6 of us got a hold of that car on the opposite side and just kind of lifted up on it as that tractor pulled, and it got traction and flipped right back over onto its 4 wheels. Now, the police officer said he was already mad now because that tractor had flipped that vehicle over, and he wasn't really happy about that. Next thing you know, that car started up. He said it wasn't going to start up. Well, I turned that ignition over, and that car started up better than it had ever since I'd ever bought it, which kind of made me mad because now the car's destroyed, and yet it starts better than it had. And that compression problem I was telling you about, I guess it just needed oil into some places that it wasn't getting oil, and seeing how it was upside down, oil drained into the places where it hadn't been before. Well, now I was going to drive the car down to the corner, but it wouldn't drive because while it was upside down, too much transmission fluid had leaked out. So we had to go and get transmission fluid. The officer said that we were not going to be allowed to leave that car right where it was. So we had the tractor tow it on down to the corner. Well, the officer said that we couldn't leave it there. We said we was just going to be gone long enough to get transmission fluid. And then, about that time, the officer said he would be back to make sure that we got that car out of there. And then here come the tow truck. Well, that was a kind of a weird situation anyway, because the tow truck driver just so happened to be one of our friends from tech school. There's a tow truck company called Fred's I-70 Towing. Well, Fred Jr., which was one of the most of us were in auto mechanics. Well, at least me and quote unquote Marty were in auto mechanics at Lewis and Clark Tech School here in St. Charles. And then another friend of mine was in auto body. And well, Fred Jr. just so happened to be in his auto body class. And he said, well, I tell you what, seeing how you guys had the police officer call back to the station and tell him to disregard my run, I'm out here on a dry run anyway. So I tell you what, we pulled all our money together and we had about $20. So we paid Fred that $20 and he drug us over to one of the other guys that so happened to be in the vehicle. They had a lake lot probably about 10 miles away from where we were at. So Fred drug that Torino up to that lake lot, and we left that there overnight. Then we got the chance to go home and get some transmission fluid. And when we got that transmission fluid put in there, that car started right up, and it drove just fine. I say drove just fine. Let me get back to the after we flipped it over. Because when we had flipped it over, the roof was crushed down to about 6 inches above the door. So what we done was we took that bumper jack out of the back of the car, and we crammed it in that little 6-inch space, and we jacked the roof of the car right back up so that we could sit in there and be able to drive the car. Now the windshield was crushed, so we had to kick out that windshield. It still had fragments of glass blowing around while I was trying to drive it the next day, but that's okay. What we done, I just put on some safety glasses so that we could drive it. So we ended up driving that car all the way down to Taylor's junkyard, and then as soon as we got there, we pulled the battery out. Now Taylor's, they pay $75. Now with the $75 from my friend and the $75 from Taylor's, I came out $25 ahead. Can't beat that. Can't beat that at all. Anyway, as soon as we got to Taylor's and we brought that vehicle in, you know, as a car is running, see, that's one thing people don't understand. If you've got a good alternator in your car, you can take that battery out and that car will stay running so long as the alternator's good. So anyway, we pulled that car in there with it running, and the guy in the yard, he took and started driving that car around like a maniac. He was sliding around corners in the lot, and then the door was only held shut by the passenger door was only held shut by the seat belt wrapped around it, around the door stem of the lock. You know how in the old days the locks had that door stem that you would pull up and push down, not like today's electrolocks. But anyway, that door stem was pulled up, and we had that belt wrapped around it to keep the door shut. Well, he's flying around, and that door's nearly leaning open, and me and my buddy are almost falling out of the car. We're saying, "Hey, man, you're crazy. What are you doing?" We had helmets and stuff on when we was driving this car like that. He was like, "Oh well, that that doesn't matter. It's my car now." So anyway, that car had been around that lot for about 2 or 3 years after that. They were using it as a lot car. That being said, that was my adventures, and that's why I stopped wearing seatbelts. Now, time's up, so I'm going to have to end it up with prayer. And I said, Father, I just thank you for bringing me out of that situation in life and every other situation I've ever had driving. In Jesus' name, amen. So, hello, and how are you? Y'all have a blessed day. Alrighty then, we'll check you tomorrow. Bye.